The halls of South African power have just witnessed an event unprecedented, so visually and politically jarring that it has fundamentally rewritten the playbook of the nation's democracy. What occurred in Cape Town was not merely a disruption. It was a seismic shift, a moment where the tectonic plates of political civility finally snapped under the pressure of accumulated scandals and national frustration. A scene so shocking that it has left the nation paralyzed and the international community reeling in disbelief. President Cyril Ramaphosa, the man once heralded as the sophisticated negotiator and the steady hand capable of steering South Africa out of the Zuma years, was effectively ejected from the very chamber designed to be the beating heart. Setting the scene, tension boils over of the Republic. The image of a sitting president unable to speak, drowned out by the roar of his own parliament, is one that signals a potential collapse avida that few saw coming. Today we are not just reporting the news. We are breaking down the anatomy of a political disaster. We are going to dissect every shout, every gavel strike, and every silent look of defeat to understand what happened, why it matters, and what it terrifyingly suggests for the future of the Rainbow Nation. Before we dive into this deep analysis, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because in times of such volatility, you do not want to miss a single update on this unfolding historic moment. It is crucial to set the scene properly, because this wasn't a sudden spontaneous outburst of the opposition attacks. Ramaphosa must go, anger. It was a calculated ambush born of months, perhaps years of simmering tension that finally boiled over into the public eye. The National Assembly is traditionally a sanctuary of measured debate, a place of controlled procedure and archaic rules designed to maintain decorum. But on this fateful day, that sanctuary was transformed into a battlefield. At the center of this maelstrom stood Ramaphosa. This is a man whose entire political career has been defined by his calm, measured approach, his polished speeches, and his trademark composure under fire. He entered the chamber expecting to lead, expecting the protection of the rules, and expecting the usual rhythm of parliamentary life. Instead, he walked into a hurricane. The atmosphere was thick with hostility long before he approached the podium. Opposition members, particularly the formidable bloc of the economic freedom fighters clad in their signature red berets, were restless, coiled like global spotlight, the world watcher springs, waiting for the signal. The usual hum of conversation quickly darkened. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs swelled into roars. And by the time the president attempted to utter his opening remarks, the respectful silence typically afforded to a head of state had completely evaporated, replaced by a wall of noise. The opposition's maneuvers were tactical and ruthless. These were not polite inquiries or standard parliamentary interjections, they were weaponized points of order. The interruptions were direct, accusatory, and pointed, striking at the very legitimacy of the presidency. The charges leveled against him were not new, but the ferocity with which they were delivered was unprecedented. They screamed serious allegations of the departure, a president ejected, systemic corruption, gross mismanagement of state resources, and most damaging of all, the highly controversial Falafala farm scandal that has cast a long dark shadow over his administration. The opposition's voice wasn't just loud. It was relentless, piercing, and uncompromising. It was a sonic assault designed to break the will of the Speaker and the President. The Speaker of Parliament hammered the gavel repeatedly, the sharp cracks echoing through the chamber like desperate pleas for order, trying in vain to restore the authority of the chair. But in that moment, the rules of Parliament seemed powerless against the sheer force of the opposition's determination. Their message was singular and chanted with rhythmic precision. Ramaphosa must the context, failure and load shedding. They argued with vehement passion that a leader with so many unresolved criminal questions hanging over his head had no moral authority to address the House, let alone the nation. As the chants of "you must go" filled the cavernous room, chaos erupted in ways that have rarely if ever been seen in the history of modern South African politics, turning the legislature into a spectacle of dysfunction. Thanks to the immediacy of social media, this humiliation was not contained within the walls of the assembly. It became a global broadcast instantly. Clips of the shouting matches, the frantic gavel pounding, and the president's silent stoic struggle went viral in seconds, forcing South Africans and the world to witness the collapse of parliamentary order in real time. Ramaphosa tried to maintain his composure, looking to the speaker for a lifeline, waiting for the protection that protocol promised. But the speaker was trapped, torn between public reaction, a divided nation, the rigid rules of procedure, and the raw physical defiance of the opposition benches. Then, in a moment that stunned everyone watching from the press gallery to the living rooms of Sototo, the decision was made. The president would withdraw. The image of Ramaphosa being escorted out walking past the triumphant jeering faces of his rivals is an image that will be seared into the South African consciousness forever. It was a public humiliation, a direct and successful challenge to the legitimacy of his office, and a moment of accountability unlike any other. Supporters watched in frozen disbelief, seeing their leaders silenced. Critics and opposition supporters celebrated, calling it a long overdue victory for transparency and a sign that the days of presidential impunity were over. To truly understand why this moment was so seismic, we have to peel back the layers and look at the context. This didn't happen in a vacuum. Public faith in Ramaphosa has been steadily eroding inside the ANC, cracks in the ruling party dripping away like water from a leaking tap. The Falafala farm scandal involving millions of dollars hidden in furniture shattered his image as the anti-corruption crusader. Combined with the crippling reality of load shedding, which leaves citizens in darkness for hours a day, skyrocketing unemployment that leaves the youth without hope, and persistent inequality, an environment has been created where frustration runs incredibly deep. Critics argue the president has hidden behind polished speeches, commissions of inquiry, and bureaucratic delays, while ordinary South Africans bore the brutal brunt of these crises. To the opposition, forcing him out of the chamber wasn't anarchy. It was a necessary act of democratic opposition, triumph or risk, accountability, a physical manifestation of the people's anger. But others look at this and wonder, does this signal a healthy, robust resistance against power? Or is it a terrifying sign of a system teetering on the edge of total dysfunction, where the loudest voice rules over procedure, law, and the Constitution? The reaction on the streets mirrored the violent division inside Parliament. Citizens in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, and the rural heartlands debated the morality of the events in taxis, cafes, and heated online forums. Some cheered the opposition for finally holding the president's feet to the fire, celebrating the disruption as the only way to be heard. Others feared this president could undermine the very international implications and investors' foundations of democracy, turning parliament into a circus where governance becomes impossible.